Good evening. The 71st annual meeting of the Wings Club is now called to order. I am pleased to welcome all of you. I would like to start by saying it's been an honor to serve as president of the Wings Club over the past year. I think it's been an exciting year and a great one for the Wings Club. Before we start today, I would like everybody to please stand and ask for a moment of silence for Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, for the crew, for the passengers, and their families. Thank you very much. We are very fortunate to have many members of the Board of Governors here with us tonight, and I hope you've had an opportunity to meet them this evening. If you would, please stand while I call your name. Mr. Bob Kraft, Club Counsel, Partner, Holland & Knight. Barry Eccleston, President and CEO of Airbus Americas. Randy Green, President and CEO of Safe Flight Instruments. Jim Jacobs, President, JWJ LLC. Mary Ellen Jones, Vice President of Sales, Asia Pacific and China, Pratt & Whitney. Todd Coleman, President, TK Advisory Services, LLC. Gary Krotheimer, President, Krotheimer & Associates. Roberto Crete, co-founder of Yanco Holdings, S.A., and member of the Board of Directors. John Pluger, President and COO, Air Lease Corporation. Bob Redding, Senior Advisor to the CEO, Flight Safety International. Greg Thomas, Chief Executive Officer, Private Air. Doug Walker, Senior Vice President, SMBC Aviation Capital. Bruce Whitman, President and CEO, Flight Safety International. We're also very honored to have past Wings Club presidents who continue to support this club as Presidents Emeritus. Please stand and be recognized. Bob Aronson, Retired Director General, Airports Council International. Dave Barger, Chief Executive Officer of JetBlue Airways. John Farron, Executive Vice President, Aviation Capital Group. Ken Gazzola, President, Flight Logics. Dave McKay, President and CEO, USAIG. If we could give all of them a big round of applause. Now, I also have to thank the lifeblood of this organization, the people that make it all somehow come together month after month. They are one hardworking team, and it starts with the incredible leadership of a club general manager who loves the Wings Club, who comes to work every day and stitches it all together, who has an enormous passion for all of us in the room. And I'd like to give a round of applause for Mr. Tom Fitzsimmons in the back of the room. I'd also ask that we give a round of applause for Lee McDougall and Pat Rowan, who are at his side all the time. Thank you so much. As you know, this marks the 71st anniversary of the Wings Club, and we have a short video that captures the highlights. Thank you, Candace Adams-Kimmel and Maria Rosa and the teams of Adams Unlimited for creating it. Let's watch the video. Well, it's a tremendous honor to be here tonight and stand as your elected president, the 71st president of the Wings Club. You have my commitment to continue with hard work the strong legacy of leadership that the Wings Club has had.
We're presenting our 4th annual Outstanding Aviator Award to Patty Wagstaff.
One thing that I usually tell people, no matter what you're doing, make sure that you do a really good job and that you excel at it and that you show that you're the best at whatever you do.
price is, the more people buy. And the higher the price is, the fewer people buy. So you don't have to be a mathematician or anything to know that when the price gets closer and closer to free, more and more people show up to the airplane.
Our success story in business aircraft is very... Everything okay? Okay. I got a little bit worried there.
I do it in front of everybody. Sorry.
Thank you.
So if you think about how the industry has really reformed itself, it's a great American story, right? There was no government intervention in this. We didn't have loan guarantees and the like. We went through a tumultuous set of changes. And now, in a classic sort of American way, we've revitalized the business and figured out how to adapt.
What I want to talk about today, defying gravity and building upon today's strong aviation safety record, and specifically about the unique role played by the NTSB.
In a little more than 3 months, we'll be recognizing another important milestone for aviation, which will be a century of scheduled commercial airline service, which began on the 1st of January 1914, when Tony Jannus operated the first recorded airline flight. The 23-minute jaunt between St. Petersburg and Tampa in Florida, with a single paying passenger, and a slightly inauspicious beginning for an industry that would quickly transform the world.
We have one terrific night planned for you tonight.
This has been an evening of firsts for me. Tonight was the first night that I ever went in an Airbus hospitality suite. But let me just say this about this industry, because I think it's very unique. I think it's very different than other industries that people work in. Because in this industry, relationships really do count. You know, to me, and I could point to Steve Haase or I could point to Fred Smith, but you know, a handshake is worth a lot more in this industry than a room full of attorneys or a stack of contracts. And I'm very pleased to be in this room with you tonight. Thank you.
I think what is very clear at this point in time is that the airlines that have been successful over that period, roughly 30 to 40 years since deregulation, it is a cost game. You recognize that early on. And we've been very, very successful over our 43 years in accomplishing that and really setting that low-cost bar.
There is a tiny star engraved in the pavement, commemorating the first non-stop flight across the Atlantic westbound. It took place in 1928. The captain was Hermann Köhl, a Lufthansa pilot. When Lufthansa headquarters got words about his plane to cross the Atlantic, they immediately dismissed him. Captain Köhl ignored the dismissal. Instead, he took one of our planes, successfully landed not too far from New York. Here, he was honored with a ticker tape parade at the Canyon of Heroes to celebrate his pioneer flight. This was when we swiftly rehired him.
Back to the event. This is our 8th annual Wings Club luncheon here in Dublin.
I think the theme is really about the 100-year anniversary of commercial flight. And the rather interesting in the United States, we just celebrated the 100-year anniversary of commercial flight. Tony Jannus, January 1st, 1914, flying from St. Petersburg, Florida to Tampa. And so now as we sit here and celebrate 100 years, you probably aren't surprised in the United States to know that over those 100 years, the industry has not been profitable. Interesting to note, too, that Tony Jannus, when the anniversary was celebrated just a couple of months ago, the aircraft that was flown took a mechanical delay as part of the reenactment, so really kind of like nothing's changed, right, over 100 years.
Here you see a chart of GDP. And on the red, you can see China, Japan, and India. The blue is the United States. Europe is that other color. And this is how the world's economic activity has divided for the last 2,000 years. And what we are seeing, is that the reality that we think of, a world dominated by the Western economic powers, is actually a short interlude in what is a far more normal situation. And that normal situation is that GDP correlates to population.
For those of you who don't recognize the music, that was Nessun Dorma by Luciano Pavarotti of the opera Turandot. And I'm glad the music worked because, Giovanni, if it didn't, it was you and I. Without any further ado, tonight we have a very special event. Giovanni Bisignani is here with us. He is a former Director General and CEO of the International Air Transport Association. During his time leading IATA, Giovanni played a key role in reshaping and modernizing the aviation industry. Tonight he is here to tell us about his new book, Shaking the Skies. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Giovanni Bisignani to give us a few words. Thank you. Giovanni, can we get it? It's protocol.
So, colleagues and friends, it's a great pleasure and honor to be back at the Wings Club to present my book, Shaking the Skies, at a time that we are celebrating 100 years of commercial aviation, and we can finally forecast a $19 billion profit. It's just a 2.5% margin. In an industry with $745 billion in revenues would have at least to need a bigger margin to make our shareholders happy. We would need $40 billion to make them happy. We've never achieved this in 40 years. Why? Our obsolete rules and our only sin, capacity, prevents us from becoming a normal industry. But at least it is a profit, so let's celebrate. And it's the result of a great work done by the airlines and of a revolution that I was able, with the board, to handle during my 10 years in IATA. As I explained in my book, I had no idea and no interest in joining IATA. I was quite familiar because I was in the board of IATA when I was in Alitalia. But a couple of weeks after September 11, I could not refuse an invitation from Leo Malin, at that time the CEO of Delta and chairman of IATA, who said to me, I said, it's not a job for me. I'm not interested in those kind of things. He told me, Giovanni, you will have a blank sheet of paper, a license to change everything. We need you to lead a revolution. With those words, and after the dramatic events of September 11, I could not say no, and I joined IATA. And IATA was transformed from a nice and cozy international organization to an aggressive GE-style company with tough targets in a completely new management team that brought $105 billion in savings from simplifying the business, airport fees, and hundreds of new routes. And the $105 billion are audited by our auditors. I was part of a variable compensation. And Shaking the Skies is the inside story and the unheard story of what happened during those dramatic 10 years. In a certain moment, they had nearly all the U.S. airlines in Chapter 11. What happened at the board meetings? What happened behind the board? Who supported the many changes and who was not ready to change? And sometimes reading the book, you will be surprised because big airlines have a different approach when they have to change. I talk also a lot about governments because governments plays a big role. I had a big fight with many governments because the only way I had to embarrass them publicly. There's no way when you have to discuss with them and trying to negotiate dues or airport fees. And I remember a meeting at the Kremlin, you know, for electronic ticket, we had to change 25 legislation. The toughest situation was in Russia. So I took a plane, I went to the Kremlin, I met President Medvedev to change his legislation and to accommodate electronic ticketing. He was not very comfortable, and at the end I told, if you don't change, your passengers in a couple of months will have to drive or take a train to go from Moscow to Europe. It worked, and we were able to have electronic ticketing also in Russia, the last country. But you will also find very funny and unexpected stories. I was invited in 2006 by the president of North Korea. He told me, you have to come to North Korea. Air Koryo is a member of IATA because we have some problem with IOSA. Okay, it's normal that the CEO of IATA flies with the local carrier. I flew from Beijing to Pyongyang with a turbulent that had 48 years old, not pressurized, and we nearly crashed on landing. When I landed in Pyongyang, the Minister of Transport came and greeted me, and it was pouring rain. He said, Mr. Bisignani, we are happy that you did not crash with the plane because it would have been a very bad for Air Koryo's reputation. But I was also in many tough places, Iraq, Afghanistan. Why? Because IATA arrives there before the war ends in order to set the first ATC system. There was difficult situations there, but you would never imagine the biggest risk was not in those battlefields or in Iraq or in Afghanistan, but in the center of Lagos, Nigeria. I was going to a meeting to see the Minister of Transport, a very pleasant lady, Mrs. Maduki. I had an armed convoy supporting me because a plot to kill me the day before was discovered. At a certain moment in the middle of Lagos, there was a machine gun fire for 4 minutes. For me, it was an eternity. I was really scared. Fortunately, it was just a traffic jam. And that was the way the police used to open the way. It took us 1 hour after because everybody left the car there and we remained stuck. But the most interesting part of my 10 years were the people that I've met. Incredible people. Gaddafi, Assad, Ban Ki-moon, Mugabe, kings, queens, presidents. That is what was really, really effective because sometimes you have a different view, a different picture of how normally they are described. And there are two quite unique stories, really, on two famous saints. One on a very tough saint who is Mother Teresa of Calcutta. You will have a different picture from what you imagine. And another, very special from a very, very saint that we love very much, who is John Paul II. At a certain moment, the Vatican, it's a very short story, the Vatican received an request, say, we will handle all the flights of the Pope free. I said, it's a bad situation for us, but we cannot accept this, and so on. It's okay. In order to change idea, we had a tape when the Pope was in Alitalia. Alitalia is the best airline, this is the best, what is the best food. And I sent to the Cardinal, who is now Cardinal Stanislao, this video. I said, look, I understand that you will leave Alitalia, but we will use this in order to compromise. He saw it, he said, he returned to Alitalia. And on safety. Safety is a #1 priority, and I will tell you there the inside story on how we were able to implement IOSA and convince the members to make this mandatory. It was not easy because the first thing was we will lose all the African airlines. What will happen? We helped them, they got on board, some had to leave, but at the end it was something that it worked very well. And in fact, the biggest problem after that we had to decide was that IATA could not be anymore the club of the big guys. Because if you want to change a system, electronic ticketing, IOs, etc., you had to have the big guys and the small guys on board. We were able to support this with some commercial activity that we started. We were generating $200 million, and we used that money to finance those small airlines that are struggling to survive, and we have many of those. IATA was no longer the club of the big guys. Environment was another difficult, and some of the boards that are here, I see, was a difficult issue to handle. Because I still have a lot of CEOs that are engineers. And the engineers, when you say we represent 1.8 of total CO2, say, oh, it's a good number. The problem was that we had become the target of the environmental campaigns. When the Archbishop of Canterbury says fly is a sin, you have to do something. And I had to convince the board that my crazy idea of carbon neutral growth by 2020 was the only possible solution. We work on a plan, and IATA is delivering. Flying commercial flights using biofuel is now in a reality, and Secretary Ban Ki-moon stated formally that we have become a role model for others to follow. On security, we had to take a completely different approach. And here too, I have to really appreciate the work of two people in the United States. First, Mr. Brennan, who is now the head of CIA. At that time, he was a special advisor of the president, and especially my great friend, Janet Napolitano, Secretary of Homeland Security, who played an incredible role teaming with IATA. They understood that we should be chasing bad people, not bad objects. Secretary Napolitano supported also my crazy idea of the checkpoint of the future. Now the checkpoint of the future is becoming a reality. It's a 10 meters lane where the passenger is screened while walking through without having to undress. It's now called Smart Security. It's being tested the first phase in Amsterdam and in London. And I received a telephone call from Janet a week ago. She's not anymore there, announcing me that it's on. But having Janet for dinner is a complicated issue. She's a very pleasant lady, but it's not easy because the food has to be tested. My bathroom shower was upgraded in case of a chemical attack. Very unlikely to take place in Geneva. The last chapter is Vision 2050. We work with the board and with many experts, including Professor Michael Porter. It looks ahead to new technologies on how to fly safer, on how to accommodate the 16 billion passengers that will fly in a couple of years. The chapter also includes some relevant challenges and opportunities in different parts of the continent. So Shaking the Skies is a book for aviation fans, for experts, for businessmen that want to change organizations, especially international organizations that are quite tough in changing. But it also has nice and funny stories to read and in nice places at the seaside, relaxing in a nice atmosphere. Thank you very, very much.
At this point, I'd like to ask Tom Fitzsimmons if we have a quorum. Thank you, Tom. So first, to present the annual report of the club, the chairs of the committees of the board have prepared annual reports on their activities. I will not read the entire report to you this evening, but there are copies that have been reviewed and approved, and they are available here tonight in the back. In the annual report, there's also a letter summarizing the accomplishments of the club from myself. During the past year, we've done a lot of work to enhance and improve the value of membership in the Wings Club and also to build on the great history. At our monthly luncheon, we recognized so many humanitarian organizations that do some incredibly inspirational work. They are the good in a great aviation industry. We are proud to recognize groups like Airlink, Team Rubicon, Patient Airlift Services, Children's Flight of Hope, the Wings of Hope, the Civil Air Patrol, All Hands, and tomorrow we'll recognize the Shelter Box. All of these charities used aviation to help those in need. In fact, without aviation, these organizations would not be able to fulfill their incredibly important missions. We are very proud and honored to have them be a part of the Wings Club. We also continued to expand our student outreach, inviting new universities in the monthly luncheons, including Farmingdale State College, students of Civil Air Patrol, and the New York University. As part of the Historical Committee, we initiated a partnership with Aviation Week to go out, bring members of our boards to universities to speak about careers in aviation. I had the great pleasure of going to the University of Pittsburgh Swanson School of Engineering in January and was joined by Scotty Fairborn of RTI, and I can tell you the next generation of leaders are incredibly impressive, and it's part of what guides this industry forward to help recruit the next generation of aviation leaders. We also supported the New York University students to establish an aviation club at NYU. These students worked very hard on this and have been successful in starting the club. Some of the students are here with us tonight. Congratulations on creating your new aviation club. We've also worked hard to continue to bring more value proposition to our members. The new golf event was terrific. The golf tournament at Liberty National Golf Club drew some great attendance, and we will continue that as we move forward. We also hosted a book signing with Winston Groom, author of The Aviators. And we launched our new Wings Club website to improve our communication and enhance the membership experience. I want to tell you it's been a real pleasure and honor to be the Wings Club president, and we hope the past year's accomplishments will serve the club for many years to come. At this point, I would like to issue the report on the new Golden Eagles. In 1990, the Board of Governors voted to establish a new category of membership, one that would recognize and honor those longtime members who have given and continue to give their support to the club. Members of this honorary group, whose combined length of time in the club and life are equal to or greater than 120 years for men and 95 years for women. I got a long way to go to get to the Golden Eagles. The difference in criteria here was there simply were no women in the club prior to 1970. There are 4 Golden Eagles this year. I would like to read their names, and we'll give them a round of applause. Robert Dormus, elected in 1973. Vincent Riley, 1988. Robert Staubley, 1983. And Richard Witkin, 1989. We are very fortunate tonight to have with us Bob Dormus and his wife, Alice. I understand they've come a long way from the great state of Ohio. I'd like to invite Bob and Alice to come to the podium and present Bob with his Golden Eagle pin and certificate. Club. We can have a photo together. I'd like to ask if there are any other Golden Eagles in attendance. Can you please stand and be recognized? Okay, stand back up a little. One more time. Thank you so much. It's now my pleasure to introduce Ken Gazzola, Chairman of the Historical and Education Committee, of the Board of Governors to present this year's Outstanding Aviators Award.
Good evening, everyone. Before I begin, since Barry is not here yet, I don't think he is he? I think it'd be appropriate that we all remind him when he arrives that if he had flown, he would have been here on time. And I do believe that JetBlue, Dave, I believe you've got a few flights that come down here and up here. What? He's here? Oh, wonderful. Oh, there he is. Okay, Barry. Very good timing, sir. Welcome. Are you all relaxed now? You took the train? You're okay? Tonight, we continue another wonderful tradition that we've established at the Wings Club. We are, in conjunction with the International Aviation Women Association, are proud to present our 5th annual Outstanding Aviator Award. Some of you may know that we started this award a few years back, and it was created to recognize aviators whose actions have made major contributions to aviation and whose accomplishments serve as role models for all of us. Our 5th honoree tonight will join a stellar roster of aviators previously recognized right here with the Outstanding Aviator Award. If you remember, the first year was Tuskegee Airmen. And if you don't remember, look at the website because we have magnificent videos of all of these individuals who are historic in their own right. Second was the Women Air Force Service Pilots, the pistol-packing mamas, I believe they're called, the Doolittle Raiders, and last year, Patty Wagstaff. Tonight, we're very proud to present our 5th annual award to Robert A. Hoover, who's an amazing military and civil pilot. Bob Hoover is considered one of the founding fathers of modern aerobatics, having thrilled millions of men, women, and children over the last 5 decades with his significant aerobatic flying maneuvers, as you will see shortly. Additionally, he has flown over 300 types of airplanes. Referred to as the pilot's pilot, Hoover was a fighter pilot during World War II, and after flying 58 missions, he was shot down off the coast of southern France and spent 16 months in a German prison camp. As you will see in our video coming up, he escaped the camp, amazingly stole a Fokker-Wulf 190 and flew to safety in the Netherlands, right out of the movie theaters, but real life. After the war, he was the backup pilot on the Bell X-1 program and flew chase for the Lockheed P-80 Shooting Star during the Mach 1 flight. Bob's best known, however, for his civil aviation career, which started when he was hired to demonstrate the capabilities of Aero Commander's Strike Commander, a twin-piston engine business aircraft. Bob has set records for transcontinental and time to climb speed, and has personally known such great aviators, and truly these are great: Orville Wright, Eddie Rickenbacker, Charles Lindbergh, Jimmy Doolittle, Jacqueline Cochran, Neil Armstrong, and Yuri Gagarin. It's an amazing spectrum of aviators and colleagues of Bob. During his career, Bob has been awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, Soldier's Medal of Valor, Air Medal with Clusters, Purple Heart, the French Croix de Guerre, and he also was made an honorary member of the Blue Angels, and also the Thunderbirds, the Royal Canadian Air Force Snowbirds, American Fighter Aces Association. The list continues. Original Eagle Squadron, and received an Award of Merit from the American Fighter Pilots Association. In 1992, he was inducted into the Aerospace Walk of Honor, and in 2007, Bob received the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Trophy Award. Now, to show you all of this in 3 dimensions, please watch the video.
Famed air racer and Army Air Corps hero Jimmy Doolittle proclaimed him the greatest stick and rudder pilot who ever lived. Chuck Yeager, his old test pilot school buddy, described him the greatest pilot I ever saw, a magician in the cockpit. He has weathered an aviation career spanning over 60 years. He is considered a pilot's pilot, a skilled Army Air Corps, then Air Force pilot, and a masterful aerobatics performer, thrilling millions of airshow audiences. The pilot is Bob Hoover. Recognized instantly by his many fans, Bob's signature aerobatic maneuvers flying the Rockwell Shrike Commander gave him instant fame and recognition. What aviator hasn't admired Bob's daring as he looped and rolled to a show-closing landing in his Shrike Commander, touching on one wheel first, then the other, but with a twist. He'd shut down both engines. You only had to see him do it once to know you were in the presence of greatness. Flying his recognizable Old Yeller P-51 Mustang, Bob's annual participation as the airborne race starter at the National Championship Air Races in Reno was simply how legends are made. Over the years, thousands of race pilots and fans have waited anxiously for him to declare over the radio, "Gentlemen, you have a race." No one did it better, nor was more appreciated, especially by those pilots who experienced an airborne emergency and were talked down to a safe landing. Bob always had that calming voice. You just knew it was going to be okay. And all this from a man who taught himself aerobatics as a young 15-year-old student pilot. Flying was his way of overcoming his seemingly incurable air sickness. After high school, Bob volunteered for the Tennessee Air National Guard, and soon he was off to Africa as a U.S. Army Air Corps pilot in the early days of World War II. But he was stuck well behind the front lines, assigned to test fly reassembled warplanes until joining the 52nd Fighter Group in September 1943. But just 5 months later, he was shot down over the Mediterranean and spent the next 14 months as a German prisoner of war. In April 1945, he escaped Stalag 1, commandeered a Focke-Wulf 190, and flew to freedom in Holland. This was his first encounter with the pilot's only true fear: how do I start it? After the war, Bob was assigned to the Army Air Corps' Wright Field Test Facility, where he met lifelong friend Chuck Yeager and began flying America's first fighter jets. He also flew his first air shows, the beginning of his lifelong love of performing. In 1947, Bob and Chuck were transferred to Muroc, home of the future Edwards Air Force Base, where Bob flew the chase plane for Chuck's Bell X-1 when it broke the sound barrier. But Bob left the Air Force in early 1949 to begin a career as a civilian test pilot. He joined North American Aviation in Los Angeles and tested the F-86, FJ-2 Fury, the F-100 Super Sabre, and other new development airplanes. During the Korean War, he even managed to sneak in some combat missions as a civilian pilot, demonstrating the capabilities of the Super Sabre. In the mid-1950s, Bob became North American's chief demonstration pilot, flying his P-51 Mustang at air shows for more than 3 decades. When North American merged with Rockwell in 1968, he began flying an Aero Commander Shrike in air shows, an unmodified twin-engine general aviation aircraft. And Bob dazzled everyone with his intricate aerobatic maneuvers, and the aircraft industry learned firsthand sales could be tied directly to his successful performances. Bob was twice president of the Society of Experimental Test Pilots, and he's now piloted more than 300 different aircraft models and flown in more than 2,000 air shows, performing in front of more spectators than any pilot in history.
Joining me tonight for the presentation is Ellen Slow, who is a board member of the International Aviation Women Association, and she will help me present the award. Bob could not be with us tonight, and those of you who know him and his vintage know it's a little difficult for him to get around a bit these days, and He's been kind enough to be joining us by telephone tonight. And Bob, we have your terrific photo on the screen. So good evening and welcome.
I have never dreamed in my wildest thoughts of accomplishments of being awarded recognition by the Great Wings Club. And I just can't tell you how much this means to me. It's the most important thing that's ever happened. I might share with you for a moment that I never thought I was the best pilot, or lots of pilots I'm sure could fly a lot better than me. But you know, I had one objective, and that was to convince myself that I could do it better than I flew yesterday at whatever maneuver I was trying to put in my routines of demonstrating so many different airplanes around the world. And it wasn't that I was trying to look more important than anybody else. I was just trying to prove to myself that I could be more precise than I had been yesterday. And for instance, I thought perhaps all of you might would care to hear about North American merged with the Rockwell Corporation. North American had been building the finest airplanes we had in World War II, and they were into the space program big time. And when they merged with the Rockwell Company, I was reporting directly to the president and chairman of the board of North American. And when the two companies merged, we inherited into one major company after that, which was called North American Rockwell at first, and then Rockwell, a number of airplanes that were being built by the Rockwell Corporation. One of them was the Aero Commander Division, and it in itself had several other divisions of different lines of aircraft, and they were involved in agricultural airplanes, crop dusters. Well, the two boards merged, and they selected me because by this time I was not only still in the cockpit, but I was reporting directly to the top management. They said, go down and evaluate all of the airplanes that they're building at the different facilities around the country and select the ones that are profitable and the ones that aren't profitable or not competitive price-wise or performance-wise. And let's make this thing profitable, because they were losing their shirt. And so I flew a lot of the airplanes, and I said, well, these are not competitive, and we got acres of them, and they're unsold, and let's get rid of those lines. I said, let's form flying clubs for facilities that we have around the world and just give the airplanes to them. And we'll promote aviation with these airplanes, which aren't going to sell anyway. So they did, and then they said, well, what do you think of the Aero Commander? And I said, well, it's a wonderful flying airplane. But I said the Aerostar is a fast airplane with the same power plants. But I said, I think I can make it look good. Well, they had acres of those airplanes sitting around. They were losing millions of dollars a year, but still building them at the rate of one a month. And I started flying it, and I said, I want to see the certification test requirements that were met when this airplane was okayed by FAA. Well, the data didn't show me anything. I couldn't believe that they'd ever even done anything. And so before I wanted to fly it before the public, I decided I would check out the maximum requirements of the specification, and it's meeting all of the demands, and it did. And so the first show was at Reading, Pennsylvania, the National Business Aircraft Show, and the president of that particular division said, after my first flight, he said, Bob, he said, you were way off the ground. You could have been down close to the ground. It looked a lot better. And I did this routine where I did maneuvers with both engines and then one engine and then no engines. And so he said, when you come in on the high-speed pass, get it down on the deck. You're used to those big props on that P-51. And you've got so much air underneath you, it'd look better if you'd be down closer to the ground. So I came in after this next flight, and the NBA lasted 3 or 4 days at that event every year. And I finished it off and came in and landed and thought nothing of it, and I rolled up dead stick right in front of the crowd, parked the airplane, and the president of that division came up and he said, Bob, he said, I didn't mean to get that low. He said, you were leaving sparks from one end of the runway to the other. And I said, what do you mean? Well, for those of you who don't know, when you're in an airplane going at its Vmax speed and you don't have any engines running, it still sounds loud because it's like a jet. You got the friction noise on the fuselage, and you don't hear anything except this loud noise, and it's always there. And so I said, no kidding. I said, I can't believe it. I said, tow the airplane behind the hangar in that tall grass and let me come back and take a look at it. And so I went back, and when people quit coming around, and I crawled underneath there, and my gosh, the antennas were gone, and some of the rivets were off, and the paint was missing. And I thought, oh boy, get a hold of a structural engineer, and let's check and see if we've done any damage to the structure. And we got one there real quick, and as a matter of fact, he was already there. And he took a look at it, and he said, there's absolutely no structural damage. And he said, we can replace some rivet heads, and he said, and that's the extent of the damage. And I said, okay, send somebody out to get a can of spray white paint and go underneath there after he puts the new rivets in there, and let's make it look like brand new again, which we did. Well, I can tell you I've never listened to anybody since then who asked me to get a little bit lower. But I learned the hard way, and with a little bit of stupidity thrown in, I left sparks up and down the runway. And there you are, folks. I'm not the best pilot in the world, but I've had more fun, I think, and met some of the most wonderful people in the world. And one of the things I'm most proud of is that my heroes eventually became my best friends. Roscoe Turner, Jimmy Doolittle, well, the list goes on and on. And I've been very proud of my whole life because I've enjoyed what I've been doing, and I ended up as a corporate officer and a member of the board of directors, reporting directly to the president and chairman of the board. And I didn't let it stop there when I had to quit flying at 80. And I'm now the CEO of 2 different companies. And I'm pleased to tell you flying is still just as exciting to me now as it was that first time I flew at 16 years of age. I can never thank all of you as much as I feel for the appreciation of this great honor. Thank you, and the best to all of you.
Bob, if you'll stay with us just one more minute, we'd like to read the inscription on the award, and Ellen Slow will read it for you.
The outstanding...
Okay. It's very nice of you. Thank you.
Can you hear me, Bob? It's the Outstanding Aviator Award, awarded to R.A. or Bob Hoover for his outstanding achievements, which serve as a role model for aviators. It's presented today, March 26, 2014. Here, here.
Bob, one more important thing is that as an Outstanding Aviator recipient, you will now become an honorary member of the Wings Club forever. So thank you and congratulations to you always.
Well, Once again, thanks to all of you. This is the most important honor I've had, and I'll never be able to thank you enough. And I wish every one of you the very best.
Thank you, Bob. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you, Bob, and congratulations on your many achievements. Each year at the annual awards gala, held at the Waldorf Astoria, we honor a member of the industry with the Wings Club Distinguished Achievement Award. The award honors an individual who exhibits outstanding accomplishments in the field of aviation and aeronautics. It's time, and we are very pleased to announce the selection of Dave Barger as this year's honoree. I'd ask Dave to please stand up. You know, Dave's past president of the Wings Club and has been extremely influential in the success of the club. He put one heck of an operating rhythm into the club when he had it. I know I was on the other side of a committee report that didn't go exactly the way it should have. He is most deserving of this prestigious award, and we all look forward to honoring him at the gala on October 24th. We hope all of you can make it. With that, I'd like to move back and invite Barry to the podium. Before we do that, I do believe, Mr. Kraft, that we do need a motion to approve the annual report. So I'd like to ask, please, for a motion to approve the annual report. All in favor? Any opposed? Great, so moved. With that, Barry, I'd like to ask you to please come forward and give the report of the Governance Committee.
Thank you, Kevin. Apologies for my late arrival, ladies and gentlemen. The following current members of the Board of Governors have been nominated to serve a 3-year term: Jeff Foland, Randy Green, Robert Isom, Jim Jacobs, Mary Ellen Jones, Gary Krauthammer, and John Rosamballon. The following are the new nominations for the 3-year term on the Board of Governors. The biographical information is available at the reception table. These would be Tom Bosco, Aviation Director from the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey; David Davenport, Senior Vice President, Flight Safety International; Dawn Higton, the Vice Chair of and President and CEO of RTI International Metals; and Frank Prey, Chief Executive Officer of Intrepid Aviation. The following members of the Board of Governors have been nominated to serve a 2-year term: Scott Donnelly, Robin Hayes, Roberto Cleet. And continuing to serve on the board as a past president and nominated for a 1-year term, Mr. Kevin McAllister, VP and General Manager of Global Sales, GE Aviation. Are there any nominations from the floor? There being no nominations from the floor, I will close the nominations. Can I have a motion, please, to elect these candidates for the board? Thank you. A second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. I return the podium to you, Kevin. Thank you.
With that, we will, I'd ask everybody, you're invited to remain for the annual meeting, which will follow immediately. After that, we will have some refreshments served in the back of the room. And I would like to adjourn the 71st annual meeting of the Wings Club. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, I now call to order the annual meeting of the Board of Governors. Tom, do we have a quorum? Thank you, Tom. Since we have a quorum, I'd like a motion to approve the minutes of the January 30, 2014 board meeting that you were sent previously. Do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? The minutes are approved. There's one piece of unfinished business from the club this year that ends tonight. This is a policy that we need to consider each year. I would like to ask Todd Coleman, Finance Committee Chair, to make a motion regarding our investment income. Todd, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd like to make the following motion relative to investment income. Specifically, I'd like to suggest that all investment income is set aside to be available for donations to charities. Specifically, that all investment income for the fiscal year ending March 31, 2014 is set aside to be available for donations to charities.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Thank you very much. The Governance Committee has proposed the club officer slate for the 2014-2015 fiscal year. The nominations are President Barry Eccleston, Vice President and President-elect John Pluger, Vice President Mary Ellen Jones, Secretary John Pluger, Treasurer Todd Coleman, and Counsel Bob Kraft. May I have a motion, please, to elect these candidates as presented? A second? All in favor? Any opposed? We now have a new officer team. Congratulations. It's now my great pleasure to invite Barry Eccleston to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for the new Wings Club president. Barry, if you could please accept this engraved gavel as a recognition of your new role as the club's leader. I wish you luck, and of course, it's a great pleasure to continue to serve you as a member of the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Kevin McAllister, of course, for all of his fine efforts this past year and his leadership during his time as president. It is traditional, as an expression of the club's appreciation, to present the outgoing president, this time Kevin, with the president's chair. It's not practical to have the president's chair here with us this evening, and so the president's chair has been sent to the ex-president's house in Cincinnati, but I do have a photo. For those who haven't seen one of the president's chairs, it's suitably engraved and inscribed Boston Rocker. It's a rather impressive chair. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that Kevin's going to be sitting in his rocking chair on his porch for the next several years. We want you to stay an active member of the board, and we know you will, not to mention in your day job. But thank you very much, Kevin. I also have a plaque, which we do have here. So our plaque reads, presented to Kevin G. McAllister, in grateful appreciation for your dedicated service as the president, 2013 to 2014, the Wings Club, New York City, March 26, 2014. Thank you again, Kevin. Okay, I get to use my new gavel now. Through the hard work of my predecessors, the club is in a very solid position. I'd like to express my appreciation for being elected as the club president with the club in such a healthy position. I was on the board of the club a few years ago when it was not in quite such a healthy position, and the board had to really work hard, in fact, to get the club to even survive. But it did not just survive, but it's prospered, thanks to the leadership of all my predecessors in this job, several of whom are here tonight. And I'm most grateful to them because it allows me to be here standing before you tonight as the president of the magnificent Wings Club in terrific shape. We have an outstanding slate of speakers scheduled for the upcoming year, and our newly formed golf tournament will be holding its second event this year in June, and already it's shaping up to be a popular event on the aviation calendar. And of course, I anticipate another sellout at the annual gala in October, honoring our friend and colleague, Dave Barger. We're continuing the work on the merger of the Wings Club and the Scholarship Fund. We've done all the paperwork, and we're now optimistic that we'll get the necessary New York government approvals, and it will be completed within this year. I'll be very disappointed if I leave this job in the next year and we have not completed that merger. It's very important work for the club. We're also committed to the expansion of the Wings Club development efforts. This is an important initiative on behalf of the Wings Club, and we have a dedicated development committee under Dave Barger and Dave Mackay working on the program. Our goal is to provide a deserving student with a full scholarship for 1 year of tuition, room and board and other expenses, and we hope to award that scholarship to the student at the annual gala. Our objective is to award this scholarship on an ongoing annual basis. This will require raising quite a lot of money. And so we are specifically approaching a fundraising initiative to fund this. Our efforts include, in fact, the hiring of a full-time development director to work with Tom and the development committee in raising the money. I'm very confident that with the support and commitment of the Board of Governors, and indeed all of our members, including all of you here today, we will be successful in our objectives. You'll be hearing a lot more about this once the merger is complete, but please anticipate that we'll be looking for your very strong support, and I mean including financially, to make sure this development effort, this scholarship fund, is off to a strong start. I'd like to announce and request board approval for the committee chairs for the coming year. The awards committee under Jeff Nittle, thanks to Jeff for all of his sterling work on the awards committee. Development committee I mentioned before under Dave Barger and Dave Mackay. European committee under Marlin Daly. Thank you, Marlin, for keeping our club alive in Europe. The executive committee will be chaired by myself, the finance committee with Todd Cowman. The governance committee will now be John Pluger. Ken Gazzola will continue as historical and educational committee chair, as will Doug Walker and Gary Spulak on the membership committee. And the program committee will continue under the fine work of Mary Ellen Jones, our new vice president. Can I please have a motion to approve this slate of committee chairs? Thank you. Can I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? The committee chairs are approved. Thank you. I'd like to remind everyone about tomorrow's monthly lunch here in this room at the Oil Club. The featured speaker will be Brad Tilden, Chairman, President, and CEO of Alaska Airlines. I hope you can attend, because Brad is a fascinating guy, and he's running a tremendously successful airline. The next annual meeting will be held here on Wednesday, March the 25th, 2015. The final course of business for tonight is to invite everyone here to stay for an open house reception, which follows immediately after the adjournment. And of course, don't forget our good friend Giovanni is here and will be signing his new book. Can I please have a motion to adjourn the meeting? All right, I call the meeting to adjournment. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.